Welcome to the Clutch Burners podcast. This is your home for stick shift drag racing, stick shift talk, stick shift tech, and more. And tonight we've got the man who broke through the 7-second barrier with the small block Ford copy motor. Yes, that would be an LS. He did it with an LS and a stick shift. So my cohort in all of this awesome stick shift talk is Rich Guido over there in the Crower shirt hoodie that matches his black 65 GTO.
And that's Bill Armstrong, who's kicking us off. And if you don't know who the other guy is in the podcast, you may be on the wrong podcast, because
I think so.
just like Jonathan Atkins, somebody else broke the internet or broke my Facebook page, because that's all it was. It was page after page, and lots of people congratulating you. And
broke my bank account, just so we're clear.
So with us tonight is Nick Cole-Mann.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited. This is going to be fun. I know this is going to be fun because when I watched your video and saw your excitement, it was like, oh yeah, this guy is passionate about what he's doing, and man, has busted his ass getting to where he's gotten.
So much work. So much.
A while. It's taken a long time.
Yeah. So Nick, tell us about, you've got the black and purple S10. Give us the goods on it. We're just going to talk about it. So go for it.
Well, man, I don't even know where to begin. It's LS based. It's 441. It's twin 88s from Bullseye. John Doe tree cam, solid roller. It's got BAM lifters in it. It has Jessel valve train on it. And I had a G-force trans. I built the 9-inch that's in it. I just redid all that's rear suspension before Maryland. So that was a huge change too, because we got a lot more anti-squat out of it.
So what gear ratio are you running?
I got a 340 in the race. Yeah. I think I need to put a little bit more because I do lack in the RPM department. But in Florida, we found the voltage was dropping down pretty bad on top. So I ended up losing 3 cylinders, and they just don't ignite anymore. So they fall off on the EGTs. And man, that happened at like 6-1 in the run. So I ended up, it was wild, man. And then
that's on your 695 run?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
then I also let off at like the 6-7 because it just nosed over, and it just didn't have the power. I didn't know if something was hurt, but thing was solid. I just need to get a bigger battery, better battery.
I think an alternator might help your program.
I have one on there too. Still eats it up.
Hey, you know what, Nick? You know what I found on mine, and I'm not saying this is what is with yours, but I was having a voltage issue at the top end too, and I got a pretty big crank pulley, and I was overdriving my alternator. And so at about 6,000 RPM or 5,000 RPM, it was max RPM for the alternator, and then it would just fall off because the alternator is spinning so fast.
So
wouldn't generate any voltage.
In Maryland, I ended up cracking the cylinder head in half. And right there is where the alternator sits. So the flame that was coming out of that was hitting the back of the alternator where the regulator is. So I don't know 100% if that alternator was working, because it doesn't charge at 16 volts, what a 14 should be charged at.
Yeah.
It charges it at like 14.8, 14.9. So it's difficult to see if that actually falls off or not. But because it went down to like 14.3, I mean, it was on 38 pounds of boost, and probably like 20 degrees of timing at 8,000 RPM.
Whew.
So, I mean, it should be igniting that, but I just think it's just too far down on voltage.
So sounds like you need a fire rated alternator.
Yeah, right. Put a heat blanket around it and protect.
What kind of alternator do you run? Do you run like
I got a Power Master?
Okay. Yeah. I had some issues with charging, and Rich and I both do the drag and drive type stuff, but I was having an issue between balancing charging at idle and then also not over speeding it at RPM.
Yeah.
And I actually switched because I was running just like an OEM style, and then I was kind of juggling pulley sizes. But I ended up switching over to a oh, I'm gonna have a brain fart
Meckman?
now. Yes, a Meckman. Thank you, Rich.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Oh yeah, they really don't build any scratch. They're not OEM parts in them at all. Like the stators,
Okay.
everything they make.
And it's
And
all adjustable regulator.
you'd have to call them, but I'm pretty sure they make ones for 16-volt setups.
Okay.
And I was just worried about over speeding them, and they were like, "You're not gonna overspeed this." So I definitely check them out. Like,
Yeah, I think I
very
need
pleased
to.
with mine. Like, it literally makes like 14.6 volts at idle. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been fighting this issue for probably, I want to say, since I ran the 704 pass in Maryland 2 years ago. And we have to run it so lean that it stays ignited. And if every single cylinder is not perfect, it burns something up, whether it's cylinder head or a valve gets burnt up and drops, or a piston, I catch a ringland. So this has been an ongoing issue that I thought I had under control, but still just follows me.
And what fuel are you on methanol or
I got
what are you on?
M1.
M1. Okay.
Once I get this figured out and I can keep them lit, I'm going to try adding some nitro in there and see what that does.
Well, that'd be M5, right?
So M5 is a 5% nitro mix. And if we're going to go, we're going to go for broke, and we're going to do like a 20% mix.
Boy.
Yeah.
Same as Big Chief.
Yeah, it's volatile. But
Yeah.
That's awesome.
if that's
awesome.
how what we need to squeeze out that little bit of extra power out of these things, I guess that's where we're going.
Well, maybe it's that shift light that's taking all the power.
Yeah, right. What's funny about that is I don't ever see the shift light anymore because I don't know if I'm lazy, but sometimes I don't do the things I need to in the computer to follow what I do with the engine, because I've changed the engine so many different times now. I mean, you guys have seen it. I've hurt the engine. I've had to change course and put a different set of heads on it to keep going. So the RPM range has changed a lot in that time. And the shift light doesn't matter because of how I shift it. I don't run it.
Yeah. How much RPM you spin in this thing?
About 8,000, 8,200. If it needs to spin a little more, the rev limiter set to like 8,500.
Yeah.
But I end up shifting it. I still do the pull on the shifter deal like everyone else. They just run it into the limiter, and I'm just pedaling it. I just off the gas, on the gas, like a little blip, and it goes right in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I am curious. So doing that, what happens to your boost curve when you do that? Because I know on the limiter, it's just
it
like
messes everything up. The boost comes down like 10, 15 pounds. I mean, it softens the shift up a lot. So I was just watching your guys' podcast with Atkins, and one of you guys were talking about how it's messed up your input shaft because it's on the shift. You got it. Yeah. So I don't know. It seems to work really well. And the one thing I did notice, because I have tried running it into the limiter, every single time I've tried to run it in the limiter, if it's set too low and you go to make the shift, it seems like it makes the tire bounce going into the next gear. And I've watched countless videos of everybody's car, and like everybody that runs into the limiter, you can see it. It's ever so slight, and I don't think you'd ever notice it you might notice it in the data on a shock sensor, but if it's so minute and it's not causing tire shake and you're not losing the tire, why would it make a difference? But
yeah. And I think
part of it.
Yeah, and one of the differences is on like your car, Atkins' car, and Rich's car. You guys all have a single disc. Well,
yeah,
you probably running the dual.
I have the single.
What clutch you running?
I have a Black Magic single disc. It's the 11-inch next gen.
Okay, awesome.
It's the same one I run. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think on the shifts that clutch probably gives just a touch. And I've got a twin disc sintered iron diaphragm.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is pulling a ton of timing right when the limiter comes back on. So when the power comes back on,
Okay.
pulling a bunch of timing, and that has helped reduce my, as Rich puts it, my flower pot of input shafts. It's helped.
I got a couple too. It definitely is. It sucks when you get that thing tightened up that much and it just starts twisting it up.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the trip to Florida, I actually learned a few things with engagement height of the clutch versus the two-step switch. Before I would have a meeting at the same point, and I would get the tire hit and then it would slip, right?
Yep.
Well, now I have it set where the clutch disengages long before the clutch is engaged. So because of that, it causes the engine to start accelerating and it makes the clutch slip regardless of what the track is like or what what my suspension settings are. So it'll always plant the tire pretty good on it seems to be planting pretty well.
So does it flare right on the hit then and then come down and grab, or how's it? What's your trend look like?
So this last time, the last hit I made, I ended up upping the RPM on the launch and it ended up dropping it. Like it came off a two-step and it doesn't flare up. It ended up just slowly coming down and then coming back up. But I think that's because I needed a little bit more boost on the launch. And if you watch any of the outside videos, the parachute cable, it goes back vertical and then you see it slow down and it kind of comes back and then the truck accelerates again and it comes back up. So like video, the data coming out of the truck is all telling me that it needs more power straight out of the hole.
I think we call that an analog G meter.
Yeah, right. I thought it was perfect. I never thought of it before until right at that video. Like, wow, that's some good data right there.
Woo, that's awesome.
Do you have a G meter in the car?
I do have a G meter. I don't think I ever look at it though. Not on that post passes at least.
Interesting.
Yeah, that you were flying, man. It would be interesting to know what kind of G's you were pulling on that.
So let me make
sure.
Let me make sure I understand what you just said. So you've adjusted it so that when you dump the clutch, the two-step is shutting off as like right when the clutch is starting to engage, or before that. So you're like running into the clutch.
So I've played with this a lot, trying different ways of doing this. And it was the best way. I thought, like, for the RPM I was leaving at for my home track, I was leaving it where the clutch switch would disengage the same time as the clutch would engage, right? Yep. So now it came to me at Florida, like, why not let this thing, I could never raise the RPM limit because it would always kick the tire, because it would always engage the clutch too aggressively right away. So on my way to Florida, I was like, why don't I let this thing slingshot before the clutch engages so that it doesn't bite the clutch as hard, so I can leave with more RPM.
So take a run at it pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. So when I did that, I was able to leave on, man, I used to leave at 3,800 RPM and it would go 123, 125, like pretty consistently. And that's when I switched to all the bigger turbos, the bigger motor, bigger cam. I used to have a much smaller motor, so I could leave on less RPM, and the turbos would spool up way faster. So what I learned back then is so much different to what I use now. Now that I figured this out, I can leave on the RPM that this engine needs to get it out of its own way, And now it's getting it out of its own way.
What kind of RPM was it?
5,000.
That's a big change. Hey, holy man.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So the way mine is set up, and I've talked to Rich about this. So like if I set my two-step at 4,000 RPM, when I look at the data log, it hits the clutch 1,000 RPM higher than my two-step. So it's getting a run at it. If I set it for 5, it hits it at 6. And if I can get I use a little bit different tactic. I use the digital clutch controller, but when I get that tactic figured out, and now I've started introducing, and I want to ask you too, like your boost builder, what you're launching at. I finally figured that out. So instead of launching on a boost, 1.5 pounds, trying it at like 7 pounds, and I'm finding my adjustments are all wrong. But yeah, it's very interesting. So
what do you do for that? Do you pull timing, add timing? Do you have a timing by boost table, or
for the boost builder? Yeah, I'm just using the basic boost builder Well, no, I guess I am using an advanced table, and I'm pulling like 35 degrees of timing. Like it is upside down on timing, but it works and it spools. And
That's how my old truck was with the turbos in the back. It required like -35, -40 degrees, and it pops and bangs pretty big.
yeah. And so what about now? Like what are you doing now for boost?
Now I run a Haltech. Before I had a MS3 on the truck, and the Haltech system, it's just their staging is so much smoother. It's essentially the same cut, but their algorithm's different, and it just, man, it's so much smoother. I don't even know how to explain it. I don't even think I have negative timing in it right now. I think I'm on like 2-3 degrees to build 7-8 pounds.
And I noticed.
Wow.
I noticed on that pass, yeah, you weren't on the 2-step long at all, and you were gone. Like
it builds.
You know how long you were on it for? Were you like 2 or 3 seconds?
When I looked, I think it was like a second, 1.2 seconds. It was quick.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really quick.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Huh. I need to work on it. It needs to get cleaned up. It's that was the 5th pass on that motor. That was brand new. That was a brand new motor.
So give us the build details on the motor. I'm curious.
So it's a Dart center counterweighted, the billet Dart 8 counterweight crank. Nice. It's got a CP rod in it. It's an aluminum CP rod.
Oh, aluminum.
Yeah, it's an aluminum rod. I can't remember what piston's in it.
The round ones, those round ones.
Yeah, right.
It's a round piston. Yeah.
It's not one of the main brand pistons. I think it might be I can't remember.
Stratton. I think they make pistons.
It's a Dart block. I got a Dart block, top seal rings. It's a Brodix BR7 head with they're the BS7s, the big spring.
Nice.
So it takes a little bit different rocker configuration.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the valve's like a 250. It's big. It's a big valve.
Big, yeah.
What kind of CFM are those on the intake?
At like 750, it's like 420, 430.
Ooh.
Yeah, they flow.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, it was only on 38 pounds of boost, and there was definitely more room to grow.
Did you hear that, Rich? It's only 38 pounds.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I want to push 18. Of course, I'm a little ways from home, and I got to get home. So.
Oh, yeah, but that's different, man. That stuff's so cool that you can take it that far back and forth and make all those trips. Like,
well, and I do have to boast for Rich because I know he won't. But on like 16 pounds, he literally made 1,487 to the tire.
Oh my gosh,
that's nuts!
That's nuts. That takes like 20. I think it was like 25, 26 pounds for mine to make that.
Is that right, Rich? Is that accurate?
Cubic. Yeah, it was like 56 or 5,700. It was 1,485.
Oh, only it's not even 6,000 RPM.
What kind of torque is that? What's the number on the torque?
Just about the same, actually. It's like 1,450 pounds of torque. Yeah,
that is crazy.
Well, he's gonna on his way to Florida. I think he's gonna hit some of those tractor pulls in Nebraska and Kansas.
Find a couple stumps in the field and go yank those.
Maybe. Yeah.
Holy crap!
Yeah. Pull 7 of them 4x4s out of the snowbank.
Right.
Hey Nick, what's your truck weigh?
That's a good question. We pulled weight out of it in Florida. I would probably say like 26-30 with me in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you built that whole chassis yourself. Like that's yeah, I saw pictures of it. That's incredible. You did a fantastic job.
I appreciate that.
And do you want to talk about your crash for a minute? Because how long ago did you crash? Like I was amazed how fast you got that thing built again.
That was April 18th, 2020. And I had just got done putting strange brakes on the truck, and I don't know why I kept the power booster on there, but they did not need that. And I covered the brakes a little too hard, and it just went sideways, and it went straight into 2 trees and a telephone pole.
Oh,
It was a rough one. That kind of diminished my want to do anything in no prep around the street though. So that was rough.
yeah. Rich and I have both done a little bit of no prep, and
We're
last
no
time
good at it, first of all.
yeah, hey, not good at it for sure. And man, like I've done it at done a couple different places. I'm not a fan. Like
I just
like
don't
I
see
like
sense
I don't
in
want to
wadding the
crash.
car up.
I don't want to
No.
crash. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Because it
exactly.
is like I have so much respect for those guys that make those cars work the way they do, like Billy Hodgkins and
Oh yeah.
who's the guy with the Mustang? Turbo John.
Bomb.
Dude,
Yeah, beater
God,
bomb.
the way they make the
Peter bomb.
yeah, it is impressive as heck that they make those things work like they do on no prep, because that's
When
not
I
something
hear some of the numbers that they talk about that some of these guys are going, I am just blown away. Like I thought I was going fast, but man, yeah, it's definitely impressive.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
we
sure.
better back up a bit because we also didn't congratulate you for beating Garrett. Now we've had Garrett on here before, so he'd be totally cool with us harassing him. But I would like to know how many broken engines between the two of you in the last year. Like people who don't understand how hard it is with a stick and the abuse and oh my god, like how many
And the challenge.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
challenge. It's man, there's been so many times where it just beats you down so bad you don't know if you want to get back up again, and you just got to figure it out. And
Yeah.
poof,
Yeah. So
yeah, it's a challenge.
congratulations. Huge
Yes.
congratulations.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I was gonna buy your truck when you had it for sale that one day.
Man, I would have felt good knowing it's going to you, another stick guy. Like
Well, for
I would've been
$2,200
happy with
bucks.
an auto in it.
Yeah, for $2,200, I'd have felt pretty good for him too.
Yeah.
Some guy hit me up and was like, "How much do you want for it?" I'm like, "I want 140K," and he's like, "No way."
Oh, and you think about your blood, sweat, and tears into that
That's
thing?
all I think about. Yeah, that's it.
How did you pick an S10 platform for that?
Ah, man, I don't even know how to answer that because I don't even remember. It was, I had the other truck for probably 4 or 5 years before this. I just like S10s. I love pickups. They're
Okay.
cool. A little out of the box. Whoever would have thought a brick would be going as fast as it is.
No joke.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no joke. That's for sure.
I was just thinking to myself, it's 2 feet tall of just a straight barn door. Just a flat wall in the front. How is that supposed to cut air?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
what's the count on engines it took for you to go 690s?
Three. I'll say 3 because when we went to Maryland, that was the same motor that I had all season. I ran it for like 160 passes. I ran it so much I beat the crank out of it at like 140 passes. The original crank that was in it was a non-center counterweighted crank, so I ended up putting a counterweighted crank in it. And then we went to Maryland, ran the 704, and then on the off season, I thought it'd be cool to get a different cam. I had to repair the heads that they had damaged from Maryland. And I think that was just not having enough timing on the top end. For so many runs, it would be breaking up almost every single run I had. And again, it was part of this losing that cylinder issue, so stuff would just be all over the place on the data. And finally, I ended up hurting that real bad in Texas. And then I got it fixed in Texas. Thank you, LME. And I ended up buying a set of the BR7s a couple months later from them after, I don't even think it was a couple months. I think it was like a month and a half, maybe a month. Because when we came back from Texas, it's still cold where we live. So I ended up leaving water in the block like an idiot. And it ended up pushing both heads out, pushing the fronts out of both heads. So it broke front and rear. I ended up welding both of those heads up and getting those
I saw
all
that.
fixed and serviced. And I'm just trying to remember the timeline, because I put the BR7s on with a solid roller cam, and the cam just wasn't right. It would hit a wall at like, we were shooting for 9 with it, but it would hit a wall at like 82, 8,300. But man, it wouldn't make any power underneath like 55, 6,000 RPM.
Mm.
So like fighting this thing. It was going slower than it ever did. I was hating all the changes that I made. I ended up taking those heads back off because I hurt them trying to, I pushed like 45, 50 pounds to it. And I ended up burning off one of the, in between one of the cylinders. So I sent those back. I got those fixed up. I got a spare one made for it. And then I got everything top fuel hooped. In the meantime of all that going on, streetcar takeover Indy, I was supposed to meet some buddies down there with the truck and go have some fun. So I took the heads off the shelf that I cracked and welded all up, leaving them out in the water. And I tossed those on. I had hurt the motor, so I ended up putting 7 thousandths undersized piston in one hole. I had like 3 or 4 different ring packs in the whole motor. I had a bunch of used bearings throughout the motor, and we went out there first rip. I ended up kicking the tire. It went like 196 mile an hour, and it dropped a valve.
Oh,
Dude, it dropped a valve on the first rip. I didn't know what to think of that. So, I'm looking at everything, and there's just no sign of what did it. Like, even on the data, everything was within reason of what it's seen before for heat. So I didn't think anything of that. And I take my heads to my machine guy, and he's like, you see these little speckles of rust on the springs? He's like, yeah, anytime you see these, it's bound to fail very quickly.
oh,
So if you ever see rust on your stuff, change out your springs. Like, I didn't know that. I guess that's a big thing.
yeah. So let me back up, because you said something that I think is real important for people to hear. And I know I've learned this, and I know Rich has learned this. You said that you had an issue because you didn't have enough timing up top. And I think so many people want to put in a soft amount of timing to be easy on the motor, when, in my opinion, it's really hard on stuff, because
it's really hard
so
on
much
stuff.
heat in the exhaust and the exhaust valves and everything else. And I know Rich has talked about this a bit, and he works with Matt Blasco. Matt's done some tuning on mine, and we're at timing numbers that I just
You would never think would be in it.
Would never think. And you know what?
Yeah.
It's so happy. And the EGTs are like 200 degrees less.
Yep.
Like, everything works really, really well. So talk about that a little bit.
So like when we were at LS Fest, I think 2 years ago when we won it, the truck's going down the track and you could hear it and you could see it. It was popping out the exhaust. So every time I would pull plugs, the timing line looks great. I mean, it looks exactly where it's supposed to be.
And where would you say that is? Halfway on the arch, top half, bottom half?
Man, it's all personal preference on how hard you really want to be on your motor. To me, perfect is like halfway in that in that curve.
I'm right with you. Yeah, that's
people are like, I want it halfway on the flat. So
I want it on the threads. Come on.
Oh, that's burning down. It's burning down. Well, when we were in LS Fest, I started kind of just picking away at the timing, and I'd add a degree here, add a degree there, just at, let's say, 8,000 RPM. Yeah. But I would never touch anything at 6,000 or below,
or peak torque.
And I would always linearize it.
Yep.
I think about it like this: if you're spinning a motor at 4,000 RPM and it takes, let's say, 10 degrees of timing, right? Now it's spin it at 8,000 RPM. Well, you're spinning it at twice the speed. Why would that be the same amount of time the cylinder is going to be burning? Like,
I agree.
No matter how much fuel or air you get stuffed in there, the cylinder can only burn it so fast because it only has that much time to do it in. So you add timing up top, it gives it more time to actually get that cylinder burnt out. And then you're, like you were just saying, your EGTs got a lot happier when you added timing. So now when we were at TX2K, I found this out too. You know, you always come back to it. You know, the setup changed, the cam changed, so things need to change along with it. You know, it went a little bit more RPM, so now I need to add a little more timing up top. But it went from 1500 degrees down to like 1325. You know,
Yeah.
it was like across the board, and it looked so beautiful. It
Yeah.
just taking timing out per cylinder is super important too, I found, because even though if you're adding that fuel per cylinder, the cylinder, again, it only takes a certain amount of time for you to be at, you know, your base fuel consumption, right? So the cylinder can only burn so much fuel before it starts losing horsepower. So if you have too much fuel in the cylinder to compensate for the cylinder's amount of burn speed, then you're just flooding out that cylinder. So instead, take the timing back out of it and you slow it down a little bit more. And then you get all your fuel burnt when it's so you can take that fuel back out of it and get it burnt at the right speed.
So you're talking about changing fueling and timing per cylinder. So what are you using for the gauge for that EGT?
So I have EGTs, and then I also look at plugs.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, that
Because if the plug doesn't show exactly what the EGT is showing, then you get either false lean or false rich conditions. And timing would show a false lean or false rich condition.
Yes. Do you
Yeah. You know what?
Sorry, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, when I was on the dyno recently, like I had Rich in mine up to be safe, and yeah, I had to lean it out just like you're describing. So
Picked
that
up
I
some
had no
power,
misses. Yeah, it makes more power and it pulls clean. There's no hiccups. So yeah, I think you're spot on. And then with individual EGTs, and you know, we pulled some plugs in the dyno too, but it is so true. So many people are very conservative on timing and make it really fat, and then can't figure out why it's not running right. But
it's still
and they're hurting
breaking
parts
on the big end. Yeah, hurting
parts. I mean, popping ring lands and popping the pistons, and it's crazy the stuff that happens when it's not right.
Yeah. So when I had those trick flows, I put those trick flows back together for Maryland again this last year. I did the same thing again. I kept picking at that timing, but I was just having too many cylinder drop issues because of voltage. And I've just been where I'm at, you know, like I've hit that wall at 720s, 7.0s, and I can't get any faster because of that voltage pretty much. Dude, I squeezed everything I had out of that for that 695, but it had a wheelie. It shut off I shut it off at the 670, like I was saying. And then with the cylinder drop, you know, there's just more left on the table with just that.
So what was it, mile an hour?
It went 195.
Yeah. And you got to go into detail because you talked about this just before we started the podcast. Break down the 695 pass because it wasn't really a full pass.
No. So let off the rip and it goes up in a little bit of a wheelie. So because of how I shift it, I pull the gear early if it comes up in the wheelie because I'm trying to kill it. You got to kill that wheelie out.
Yeah.
Wheelie sets down kind of hard in second. So it gets a little bounce. You see it in the shock sensors and everything. Click third. It's nice and smooth. Grab fourth. It's still nice and smooth. And then at 6.1 into the run, I lost 3 cylinders. Just too rich. They're just too rich. So it just falls off. I think they went from like 1200 degrees down to 740, 750s. So pretty early in the run. I mean, this thing shut off. So since it nosed over, I just let out of it at the 6.7. But it was so weird. As soon as I crossed the traps, I knew it was a 6-second pass. So I made the turnaround, and I'm like, I didn't even hit the chutes. I was like so confident that I didn't have to pack anything. I didn't have to do nothing. I could just pull it up to the trailer and be done with it. That I just drove it back. I didn't pull the chutes. I just got it stopped. I turned around, started driving back, and my crew rolls up on the golf cart and they're flailing their arms. They're freaking out. So I put it on the 2-step a couple times, all happy and giddy. And at this point, we had the whole track just, dude, they were all just amped up to be there. So like when I got back to my trailer, basically everybody that was at the track at that point was over at the trailer, and we were all celebrating, and it was really cool.
That's awesome.
It's a
That is, I mean, it's a huge accomplishment.
yeah, it's a big deal, man. That is a
Yeah.
big deal. Like,
Yeah, that's so cool.
and
Appreciate it.
especially considering how much you do yourself. And congrats to Garrett for the team that he's built, but he's got a
Yeah.
bunch of people helping, right? Like
Yeah.
not Nick. Nick's got probably Shane helping, but and maybe
I
the
have Shane
girlfriend.
and my girlfriend Sarah that help. They help with making sure tire pressure, the body's all good, making sure my doors are good, making sure I'm good, whether it's food, it's clothes, it's taking care of people that are around me, like they got my back. I mean,
So,
when it comes down to it, we got to pull the truck apart. Shane's right in there with me, getting stuff torn down.
so let me ask you a question because you talked about your crash a little bit. These guys help you, and I've seen some of the older videos. You're running like bottom sevens, and I have to say this: you got your visor up and you got no gloves on.
Yeah.
Has that changed? I hope.
Does that change what?
Has that changed? Like, are you wearing the full safety gear now?
I still don't wear gloves.
Ooh, okay.
I have a fire extinguisher system on board.
Okay.
I have used that at Maryland. I did use that. Um, I dude, the visor thing is just memory, just forgetting.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
like, I would throw my visor down in a heartbeat if I could just. I'm so focused on what I'm doing. If I don't get that visor down before I start pulling in the burnout box, it's forgotten.
Yeah. Understood.
So
Understood.
it's all just,
Yeah.
you got to get your routine down.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
routine is just as important as doing it.
And
So
you use a Hans device, correct?
yeah, I
Nice.
use the next gen. I
Okay.
use the next gen. So
Okay.
I like
So
that.
let's back you up. Let's talk about your routine. Talk us through from burnout in what gear to launch.
So I mean, my routine starts at when we're pulling into the lanes, we're all kind of hanging out. I start kind of, pulling back from people. I'll keep to myself. I'll sit in my truck. I'll, gather myself for what I'm about to do. Because as you guys know, it takes some concentration to do this.
Frank Romano says
So
he meditates, and I've begun to do that as well.
yeah, just
Yeah.
to find that perfect pass, you gotta just focus and pretty much drown everything else out in the world.
Yeah.
So like I have a lot of friends that like going with me to these races, and they all know, 2 minutes before I'm suiting up, getting ready to go make the rip, just kind of let me do my thing, focus. And then it's, put the helmet on, get ready to go, strap up, get in the lanes, get in the burnout box. And I start out with a second gear burnout. And then I don't like pulling it past because I don't want to pull the rubber or pull the fresh glue if it's down. Sometimes I don't even go in the groove. I would much rather be on the fresh prepped glue. So if I see a bunch of people are kicking the tire, or I see a bunch of people are in the groove, and that groove has been worn in with a bunch of other people's rubber, we set completely out of the groove.
Interesting.
And I've found that works very well for me.
Did you ever run this truck with a bias ply, or has it always been on a radial?
It's always been on a radial.
So talk about maybe like your clutch and suspension setup, because Rich is making the jump to radials, and thanks, Rich. I'm gonna have to do the same thing now, but I feel like maybe I'm making way bigger deal out of it than I should, but the slick seems to be pretty forgiving when it's not perfect. Where the
If the
radial,
track
he's
is
got to
crap,
be right on the money. Yeah.
yeah. If the
Are you
track is
basing
crap,
that? Are you basing that on all the twisted input shafts, Bill, or what are you basing that off of?
Oh God, so many things. And the lightness of my wallet.
so I think with clutch setup and slick, it starts to become pretty violent on how it engages. Yeah, I would say it's probably pretty violent versus, with a radial. I don't know how much base you run, but I only run about like a turn of base, and I
Yeah.
run a ton of counterweight. So it engages pretty soft. I found when we were twisting input shafts, it was like I started pouring on the base to get it to 60 foot. And when I was going 111 on the back tire, 60 foot, that's when it really started twisting the input. I haven't pulled the trans out yet since we've been to Florida, so I'm interested to see what it looks like, because I definitely implemented some different clutch tactics than I have in the past. So we'll see, I guess.
You know, yeah, I'm so glad we did this podcast, because I struggle with the exact same thing as you. I would launch at 3,800 RPM, because if I would launch any higher, I would kick the tire.
Yeah.
And that makes so much sense. If you take a bit of a run at it, get the clutch slipping
Before it can engage.
Before it can engage. Yeah, no, that makes. And I've
I
tried both.
Go ahead.
I have both. I have the same dual 8-inch that Atkins went 661, and I have the next gen.
Oh, nice.
My 60-foot so far with the dual 8 were better than the next gen, but I think it was also the radials and the better prep track. So I'm sure I can do it with the next gen. I just gotta figure it out. But that makes good sense. So I'll have to try that. If I run into the same issue in Florida, I'll be trying the Nick launch technique. Adjust that clutch switch.
I was really happy that I figured that out, because that really changed how I can leave with the bigger turbos. You know, having those bigger turbos, they did not want to spool underneath. I would say they didn't really want to spool underneath 4. So like I got it up to 42 with the big turbos, but it still would be hit or miss on the tire. So getting it up there really made a big difference.
And which radials are you running?
I got the pro brackets on it, 28-10-5. I had
is that
for Maryland, I had tried the Hoosier DR2s, and they worked very well. I would definitely use those again. I prefer the Mickeys though. I think they just ride a little smoother. When we were doing the balancing on them, definitely could see the Hoosier would do this. And the Mickey had it a little bit, but it wasn't, you know, as it's rotating, it would bobble up and down. So
is that because the Hoosier has a little softer sidewall?
I think so. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. I got mine from Rich. I think they're the special DV2 compound, if I remember right.
I got them the special ones.
Right.
Because we're in pretty steep competition, him and I. So
yeah. That's funny.
What was I going to ask you? So which shifter are you running on there? Are you running a tick, or are you
I got a
running
tick shifter. No, I got a tick shifter. Atkins was he got me hooked up with 2 tick shifters. I got a spare trans too. You run their mid plate. I run all their forks. I run their 5/6 delete stuff. So G-Force ends up putting my trans together with their specs, and then I get it all with all the tick goodies in it. So
yeah. I think he hands those out on Halloween. Just
right
over to his house.
Low cost of insert how much it costs here.
Yeah. If you ask, you're listening to the wrong podcast.
When I go to Florida, I pretty much have a full gear set, which there's a ton of fast guys going.
On top of the trans?
On top of the trans, and I bring a spare stock trans just to get me home. Just in case it goes
home.
Really
just in case, sir. I like it.
Yeah, just in case, sir. I love it.
Yep. So how much counterweight do you run? I'm like 95 or something total.
So I got 9.5 on each arm times 6. I don't know what that brings it out to.
Yeah, just about 60. So but you're substantially lighter than me. But
I was just about to say you got a heavy car. What is yours weigh?
4,050.
Wow, holy crap. How do you keep that trans together?
It's impressive, actually. I think that clutch is pretty key to keeping it together. I mean, I broke it last time out, but I broke one of the few stock parts, and that was a shifter, one of the original shifters in it. So I have a tick in mine now too. So I'm confident I won't break it. But they're amazing transmissions.
I'm very impressed. I think I got 150, 160 rounds on one of them, and I think I got like a 30, 40 rounds on my other one now. So,
wow,
there you go. That's awesome.
So I want to selfishly ask for a little bit of information on suspension because you and Rich are both running essentially four links.
Yeah.
You built yours. So what would you tell a guy that wants to run fast on a leaf spring setup and a radial?
Put a four link in it.
Probably
no. Listen, that's what the other truck was. What kind of pinion angle you running that thing?
What the hell's pinion angle?
Oh no.
No. So okay, so understand like I run a pinion angle that doesn't vibrate when I'm going down the highway at 100.
So I would suggest getting blocks or figuring out a way it can be adjustable so that you can add some pinion angle. Because I found with pinion angle comes anti-squat because then everything gets happier as it goes through the travel. You know, when you don't run the pinion angle, the thing wants to lurch back on itself and it gets beyond the pinion angle and starts making the drive shaft unhappy. And then you're just killing horsepower off the line. So running a lot of negative pinion angle when you're using a lot of power, it pulls that thing back up into the straight position as it's coming out of the car.
So I do have some undercar video, and it does seem to be very straight when it's going down the track. I do actually have some wedges in it that point it down a little, and it doesn't vibrate. And I've got full cow track set up in the back with the split mono leafs and Menser shocks.
Sounds like you're doing everything the way it should be then.
But a guy wants a lot of separation. Like I look at Atkins' car, and it's just like
you'll have to move
Baja suspension in the back with how much separation that thing has.
So with your car, I would say you would have to get some adjustable front boxes to move that spring up, get that front perch up a little bit more.
Oh,
that'll give you a little bit more bite in the car. And the higher you move it, the lower the car can go too. And every time you lower the car, the better it's going to move it forward versus up, you know, in ways that you don't want versus going forward, you know. You don't want to wheelie, you don't want it to lift up in the back a ton, you want it to leave nice and flat. You know, the front needs to stay flat with it. So
yeah, so you're saying raise the forward mount for the leaf spring.
Yep.
Because does that change? And pardon me, I'm just not super educated on this, but does that change the instant center?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
And does that move it up or further out, or
that would move it further back on the car?
Okay.
And it would move it higher on the car.
So that gives it more leverage.
Correct.
Okay.
And then and with a radial, you want as much as you can get before you start making the thing wheelie all the time. Like I think I could take a little bit of bar angle out of mine and get that wheelie to calm down some.
Okay, so another question on the Caltrack, there's two holes for that Caltrack bar in the front. And I believe it's the upper hole is supposed to be softer and what is more preferred with a stick shift. Would I want to try the lower hole with the radial?
So the lower hole would lower your instant of center. Because that instant of center comes off of the back tire to where the Caltrack hole is.
Yep.
And then that would come off of the I can never remember with leaf spring stuff because it's always so goofy because it's people measure it in multiple different ways of how do you get your instant of center. Some people go off the top of the tire to the camshaft, and some people come off of where your pinion angle, where that comes out. So I usually go off the top of the tire to the camshaft, and where that line meets would be your instant of center point.
Okay.
And what you said you redid the four link in your car. What's your anti-squat now? Do you know?
Oh man, it's real far back. So my four link is 27 inches long. A typical four link is going to be about 20 inches long. With the longer bar, it makes the adjustment a lot finer. And the brackets that I originally had on it were like a cheap Summit 7/8 bolt hole, you know, like a bracket car bracket. Like they were some old technology. So to get that fine point of adjustment again, I made the bars a little bit longer. And with doing that, it makes everything react a lot slower. So the longer the bar, the slower it's going to react. And as with a stick car, you guys know things need to get slowed down a little bit because they're violent. They are just violent.
Yeah, for sure.
So with that that longer forelink, I couldn't get enough lower bar angle out of it to go up on the chassis. So the next best thing I can do is make it go lower on the rear end to get that lower bar angle up higher. I ended up buying some quarter max brackets for the rear 9-inch housing, and that ended up bringing that bar so much lower. I think the bar is at like a 7 or 8 degrees sitting on the ground. So
Wow.
it's got some serious anti-squat in it.
Seems to be working though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty close on the middle of the shock adjustment too. So like it's probably pretty close. I think now I just got to putz with the weight bias a little bit and just try to keep that front end down.
And what do you run for tire pressure in the rear?
16.5 on those tires.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because Rich,
Gotta
you're like
careful with that
something.
though.
You're like 20 something, aren't you?
No, I think I was 18 and a half, 19.
So
But
tire
heavy
pressure
car.
is going to be a lot with weight, how much the car weighs.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the lighter the car, the less air pressure you're going to need.
Okay.
In some instances, if you get too far down on the tire pressure, the tire just folds up when you start accelerating it.
Yeah.
So that's where you would start having to add a little bit tire pressure back to it. On, the tighter the surface, you might go a half a pound more tire pressure to get it to not fold up as much.
So if your radial tire looks like Bill's picture there, that's bad.
Oh, you're running it over and it's kicking the tire.
Yeah, I have to say that is a neat picture, but literally the next frame after this, it's completely blown the tires off. Like,
oh yeah, I'm sure.
Like, I love the guy that took it because I'm like, that's so sweet. But I'd love to see the video of the next because it's just like right after that. A little too aggressive on the clutch tune up there. So that being said, though, with the Hoosier, the DR2, that because it's a little softer sidewall, I may end up running a little more pressure than the Mickey Thompson.
So now it's funny you say that. I found that the DR2, it almost likes being treated more like a slick. I think I ended up running 15 pounds of tire pressure in that one versus the 16.5 in the radial. But
okay.
I've been, the radials will go 100 passes and stay consistent. The DR2, I started wearing that thing down after 12 passes. So when I do so many passes with those pro brackets, you start to have to put tire pressure back in them because they're just getting beat. Once you pull those tires off the wheel, you can see it in the sidewall. I mean, this thing's just floppy at that point versus when you first get it and it's stiff. So it just gets beat up over time, and you gotta just add tire pressure to compensate for that.
That's what she said.
What kind of shocks?
You set it up perfect. I couldn't resist on that one.
What kind of shocks you running?
So in the rear, it's an AFCO. It's the nitrogen filled version. So it's the big gun double adjustables. Nothing special. 9-inch stroke on those.
And so when that thing's just sitting at ride height, how much chrome is showing on the shock?
About a 1/2 inch.
Okay, so not a drag and drive setup.
No, I would change. I would just change the ride height real quick. I've thought about doing the drag and drive stuff. The truck has a radiator on it. It runs down the road. I mean, it's got an alternator on it. I mean, it could go do that technically.
That would be sweet.
Yeah. I think it'll overheat.
You might want to put 5th and 6th gear back in it though.
That's what the spare trans is for, right?
Oh
yeah, that's right.
Get the stalker.
Sure.
There's no rule that says you have to run the same transmission on the street and at the track. So you're right.
Exactly.
That's true. That's true. Huh.
Yeah, there's 3 guys going to try running 7-second averages at Sick Week coming up here. So that's pretty damn cool.
That's impressive.
I think it's honestly people like yourself and Garrett and Jonathan. I mean, I think the last 2-3 years, stick shift racing has just taken off. Like, especially when guys are, I've got some buddies who have, big tire cars that haven't been in the 6s. So when Nick Cole-Mann Six is in his
Big
six
tire
is in
auto
his,
cars. Big tire
Yeah.
auto cars.
yeah.
And when he does it in his pickup truck with a small tire,
You know,
that's awesome.
yeah, that's a hot button.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a hot
That's a-
button.
So I'm curious. You said you run methanol at the track, right?
Yep.
What's the fuel system? You running two sets of injectors, or what exactly are you doing on the motor to fuel it?
So I have a set of 750 pound per hour billet atomizers, and then I run a set of 1700 fuel injector dynamics. And I got it staged where it just kind of cruises and idles on the 1700s, and then the 750s take over for full time use. And if I ever run out of those, I start pulling the 1700s back in. So the guys, Nick over at Haltech, really helped me out and got me set up with the knowledge I needed for that, because there's so many different ways you can proportion it out. And that was another thing I was having some trouble with, is we were running it where it was like a 50-50% percentage of how it brought in the injectors.
Yeah.
So as soon as the first set of injectors would hit 50%, it would start pulling in the other set until it hit 50% and then come up together.
And you're talking about 50% duty cycle.
Yeah. Yep. So that's another thing I was worried that was causing the cylinder heads to get burnt up left and right, not just running it at like the verge. Dude, it was always at like the verge of being too lean. And this last time around, I feel like it's not at the verge of too lean, but it is definitely leaner than I'd like to run it at.
And fuel pump, mechanical.
It's a mechanical, yeah. I got a Big Bertha 32 gallon per minute on there. I went just a little crazy. I wanted to make sure I got enough fuel. So the whole system is built, it should make like 3,200 horsepower, but that motor ain't going to take that.
That's not crazy. Come on.
Everything you're doing is crazy, just so you know, Nick. So
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I think you've kind of alluded to it, but do you do all your tuning?
So when I first got into the Haltech stuff, I didn't really know how to navigate the system. But before that, I had done all my tuning on everything that I ever built. We went down to Haltech. Eric at Haltech also has given me a lot of information and showed me a lot of things and got me to where I am. But yeah, at this point, I've been doing all the tuning for the last few motors, and it's like we even changed how the engine runs. It used to be on a pressure, exhaust pressure versus manifold pressure, so engine pressure ratio, which was that was interesting. It was cool. Numbers didn't really change a whole lot throughout the whole table, so that was really interesting. Now I'm back to like a VE style table with speed density, and I seem to like that a little bit better. I just how that works, how that plays out on the table works for me a little bit better, so I'm able to navigate it a little bit easier.
Nice.
Yeah, for the most part, I do everything on the truck when it comes to tuning, chassis tune-up, fabrication, pretty much everything. So
what's so cool is that people see LS powered stick car run 695, but they just don't have any idea of how much detail and how much work, how many broken parts it is to do something like you did. So once again, congratulations. I just had to say that again. I'm just listening to you and thinking,
dude, I appreciate that so much. Like you're right. It's taken an immense amount of work and time. And when I talk about this stuff, like, man, this is my life. This is all I do. I live, breathe, eat, sleep. This is all I do. So cars are my love, my passion.
Oh, you could tell. You could tell on your videos.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So awesome. And traction control at all?
No. Every time I played with traction control, I also hurt the motor with traction control. Just stupid things, drive shaft curve. I had a little bit too much torque cut in it, and how Haltech's torque cut is it's a multiple cylinder cut, right? So if too many cylinders cut too much, if you go over 50%, you run the risk of hurting the motor, because now you got all this fuel and all this back in the intake, and then the second you let that thing back loose, now it just goes pop, you know. So it's definitely something you got to be careful with, but when it works, it works. I tend to turn it off when I'm trying things, just so that I can see if it really works or not, you know. Otherwise, man, if I know I'm racing somebody real fast, I got to turn it off, because this thing's got to go down with everything it's got, not be cutting out. I also turn off safeties a lot of the time, because we had an EGT safety on it for a long time. And there was one weekend where it was hitting it every single time. I'd start the truck up back at the end of the racetrack, and it would just run like complete shit until I got it back to the pits and I could shut it all off and turn it back on, you know. I pretty much go raw down the racetrack. So
now, Rich, do you run traction control on yours?
No, I've found the same that so I'm running Mega Squirt still. So I have a MS3 Pro Evo is all I'm running on mine. And I just find that with a stick, there's just it's not an automatic. There's so much jumping around, and so I don't run it anymore. I've tried it, and it saved me on 1/8 mile track that was pretty dirty, and I was on traction control the whole way, and I didn't know it, and it still ran a decent time for what everyone else is doing. But
yeah,
I haven't been running. I'm really curious to see Garrett working with Peter Harrell.
Yep.
And see how well they can get Leroy started if they start using the traction control. So
well, yeah, I seen that last video they posted. He was mainly talking like he was going to bring in the big dog on tuning. So
he's got the top end traction control. What's that set up? The
Davis box.
Yeah, they're big money for that. Those are pretty sweet.
Yeah, I was definitely following them the whole time. Like, oh crap!
Oh yeah,
706. Oh crap! They went a 701, which is funny because they went the 701 while we were on our way down there. So
you're like, don't do it.
Oh man, I was like, no, we need to get to the racetrack right now.
That's right.
Hurry!
Right. Drive faster. Drive faster. Take chances. That's so funny. So describe the end of a pass when you're looking at your data. Like, what are the high points you have set up? Like, what do you look at? Like, Nick's first go-to is what?
Like, are you saying as I'm finishing the run and I'm pulling it into the turnoff, or are you saying
no, like
pull the data out of the computer and look at that
data out of the computer? What are you looking for?
Crankcase pressure is number one. So if I see crankcase pressure, that means the rings are pissed off, the motor's hurt, or whatever reason. So then if I see crankcase pressure, then I start to look at, manifold pressure. I look at how much timing was in it. Plugs are pulled before I even look at the data. So I'm looking at plugs the entire time I'm going over everything that's going on. And then I would say probably EGTs are up there too on what gets pulled first. So if I see any cylinder drops, I can kind of know what I'm expecting to see on the plug.
Okay, so this is a dumb question. Where do you put the crankcase pressure sensor?
I have mine directly in the valley cover.
Okay.
I wish I could get it lower. I've thought about putting it in the like the dipstick hole, because I don't have a dipstick on my motor. I run a dry sump system on mine.
Okay.
Just to get like a much closer, accurate reading. But the valley cover is pretty good too.
Yeah, I don't have one. Never even thought about one of those.
Yeah, that's awesome.
More money. This podcast cost me so much money.
Oh my God. It's not even over yet. All right. Great to talk to you. We'll see you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
So oil pressure with dry sump, no issue there.
It's usually like 110 pounds, and it fluctuates during the pass anywhere from like 104 to 110. So I cut oil filters every single 7 passes. Oil gets.
Did you say you cut them apart?
Yeah. Yep.
Why don't you get a filter you can easily inspect?
Every single time I've ever seen somebody using one of those clear views, they're like, dude, I see everything wrong with my motor instantly.
You know what?
And I don't even mean that as in like they're seeing something's wrong, like actually wrong. They're seeing all the crap that goes through it anyways. Like, there's jipe in the oil no matter what you do.
So I'm not even saying a clear view because I do like those, and I know it's saved Rich's butt a few times, but I run one that is easily, you take it off, the center comes out, it's all stainless steel, like it filters really well, but it's easily inspectable. I don't have to cut anything apart.
I guess I never really thought of it, to be honest with you. I more so always thought about the clear views, and then I just run a small block Chevy Wix filter, you know, one of the racing version with the drain back valve in it.
Yep.
So nothing special. I think it's just easy. Cut it apart, look at it, toss it, you know, easy to change out real quick.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that you're totally right about the clear view. If you are OCD, like it would drive you nuts.
Yeah.
But if you know your engine and know what to expect, like there's lots of times there's trash in there and I'm like, yeah, it just looks like normal trash.
Yeah.
But I had once where a piston pin clip came out and there was like long pieces. Well, it was long straight pieces of aluminum and I'm like, that's not normal. And I'm like, where the hell is that coming from? And it was actually because the pin was out hitting the cylinder wall and was just catching the other side of the piston.
No shit.
And it was flexing the piston. And I didn't make another pass because I saw that and I couldn't figure out where that aluminum was coming from. But, you know, lots of times, so it carved up the cylinder wall a bit. And that was my first failure in a drag and drive event. I had to, I towed it home because there was a car there or a trailer, but I think I probably could have jammed it back in and threw the clip back in and drove it home. It probably would have made any difference, but
so it did a little smoke, you know.
Yeah, that's right. All the way to Canada. It's like, oh, where's Guido? Oh yeah, there he is.
Hey, there he is.
He's dusting crops the whole way back.
He's the skeeter repellent.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So I really like my clear view for that. But you're right. If you're and even when you cut filters, I mean, lots of people. I know a few of them that did some drag and drive events, took their motors apart, quit the event because they saw stuff in their filter, and you'll know when you have a bad motor. Like the filter is like full, like it's a glitter. Well, like Bill's got a great picture of one of those.
I do. There's always stuff in the filter, but when it looks like a stripper club convention went through, you got a whole different game going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I ended up tearing up that crankshaft, you know, the first thing I do, like I pulled the crankcase pressure. Oh, it's bad. Like it's 30 pounds of crankcase pressure. And I couldn't believe that, just being two rod bearings, you know, they started to fail, but everything just gets real hot and mad, and the rings get upset and pressure gets by it. Yeah. So I pulled the oil filter off, I cut it, and dude, this thing was full. And I'm like, okay, hopefully we caught the bearing so we can just polish up the crank and keep going.
Yeah.
This was a local track night we did this at. We took the oil pan off, we pulled a bunch of stuff apart, took it apart, was like, yeah, that's completely done. And chucked the rod back in the pan, put it all back together, took it back home. Trying to fix it at a local track night was kind of funny though, because if it would have been okay enough, I would have tossed a new bearing in it and made another couple passes.
Nice.
Awesome.
Just stupid.
Yeah. Stick guys aren't afraid of a little work, that's for sure.
No, you can't be.
What kind of bell housing do you run?
I got a quick time on mine.
Oh yeah.
I wish I had a Browl. They just came out with a new one for the LS. They're the LS and modular and a couple other, but for the T56s, I like how much deeper, and they got an awesome adjustment window on them. Like I got this little adjustment window on it, and sometimes it's a bear to get the thing to turn over to the right spot to get the adjustment out, you know, the counterweights off of it.
Yeah.
Cannot
Yeah, I have
adjust the base at all. I got to pull a trans to do that. So that
Really?
sucks.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that sucks.
that sucks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we've
I
gotten
mean,
it down to like 15 minutes, pull it out and put it back in. So it's not bad.
Have you thought about just making that hole bigger in that bell housing?
So where, dude, I hate
got
our
enough
bell
room.
housing. I hate the T56 bell housing. Like, where do you put for your next gen? Where do you go in with the Allen key? Because there's nowhere that I could fit the Allen key around my bell housing to get to it.
Yeah, so Brow built me a bell housing, and so
Yeah.
the first time they sent it, didn't have enough clearance actually. So I had to send it back, and they built me another one, and there's enough clearance. Like I have a tool I could send you a picture of it later, and I can get in there. I mean, it literally takes me longer to jack the car up than it does to
Make the
adjust the
adjustment.
base.
Yeah.
Because
That's mint.
because I put like 6 or 7 turns in for the street, and then I take it all but a quarter turn out for the track.
Oh wow.
And I have a bump button underneath the car too, so I can. You gotta be very careful you don't run yourself over, because that would suck.
Make sure it's in neutral.
I remember the first time seeing that. Atkins was showing me that on his, and I was like, dude, that's the most genius thing ever. And that was back when I had the more street orientated truck. So I'm always under there. You know, that thing was jacked up 3-4 times a week. We used to race that on the street every single other night. So that was
in Mexico, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, Brow built it. I mean, my counterweights were touching my quick time. So I had to do a little clearancing to get that not to happen. But the Brow, I've had zero issues with the second one. Once I told them and took pictures, and I basically drew a line. They had a bolt hole
where you needed that extra clearance for the counters.
Where I needed the clearance, yeah. So I asked them if I could clearance it like I needed the new one, and they said yes. So I did that. I clearanced it all out. And
how much was that? If you don't mind me asking. The Brow.
It was only like, I thought mine was like 1,080, but somebody told me they went up $400. That's US.
I could see that, because when I looked at the quick times again, dude, they're up to like $800-900 now. It used to be 630. I can't believe this crap.
Yeah. So it's not that big of a leap to go to a Brow, and I think the product is very nice, and
that's what I like to hear.
Adjusting. Yeah, and mine was pretty custom. Like I still have mechanical linkage. I don't have a hydraulic throat, or I'd probably be running one of Bill's deals. But so I'm still all mechanical. You're hydraulic on yours though?
I still have the hydraulic. Nice. That's another thing. As fast as y'all want to try to leave the line, like I can't dump it quick enough to get the thing to reaction time. You know, I think my best reaction times are like 0.080s, 090s, and I feel like there's just room on the table left for a mechanical adjustment to be a little bit quicker there. So that's something I'm thinking about.
Do you have a restrictor or something in that line?
I don't. It's a -3. So to get it to push far enough for that, I had to go with the smaller line so that it would have the volume of fluid, just needed to get it to the cylinder.
Yeah.
And
what size master do you run? Sorry.
I think it's I want to say it's a 7/8. I'd have to go and look at it though. I think it's 7/8. It might be a 3/4, but regardless, it's either way. I would have still needed to go with the -3 line, because I run the Ram throwouts.
Yeah.
Every time I put a -4 on there, it throws it like a quarter of the distance that it does with the -3 on it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Always would miss with the -4 line on it. So that made a big difference too.
Interesting. Okay.
But that was with synchronized trans back in the day as well.
Yeah.
So I learned that, and I took that from with the synchronized trans. So it might be a little different with the dog box style trans.
And so G-Force builds them. Do you run an input shaft sensor too, so you can measure clutch slip?
I wish. I don't even have a drive shaft speed sensor at this point.
Wow.
I ended up taking it off to put on a customer's car because we wanted to do some testing on it. And it never got put back in my truck. So I just went down to Florida without it. And it ended up, I rarely ever look at it, to be
It's
honest with
just
you.
weight savings. I mean, it's just weight savings. Now you took it
Yeah,
off.
right. I try to just pay more attention to what the engine RPM is doing, you know. As long as I don't see any flares, I see nice smooth coupling. I'm not too worried about what the wheel speed is doing.
Yeah, you've driven enough. You know when the clutch is slipping.
Yeah, when the
Right?
clutch is slipping or when the tires spinning, you know.
Yeah. So I was going to tell you how I use the Mega Squirt, and I have a shift cut knob.
Yeah.
So I don't run it into a rev limiter, and so it's got micro switches whether you push or pull. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not.
I
but,
am. We have a Cadillac that has that same style handle, and man, that
Yeah.
stuff is really it works really well. I'm
Yeah.
very impressed on that. It almost could be faster than what we were talking about with the running into the limiter, because then you're not constrained by an RPM drop. You're constrained on how fast you can pull it, and then
Well,
release.
and you can still pick when you want to shift. So if
Right.
there's something weird, if you need to shift early or if you need to push it a little harder. So it's working good for me anyways, with the Mega Squirt, and it's got a motorcycle shift, sequential shift in the Mega Squirt. So I just use that. It's got all the settings you need. Yeah, it's got all the settings you need. Like I cut for 0.12 of a second, and then I have a holdout for like half a second so I can get my hand off the shifter and get it ready for the next gear. And yeah, it seems to be working pretty well for me. But
You ever have your hand just slightly on it and it kind of messes you up a little bit?
Well, I've had a couple of issues. One, when I built I built a different handle on it so it looks a little bit more stock. I actually put a line lock button on the top of it. And I couldn't figure. I got the clutch back from Kale, and I'm like, "The hell did he do to this clutch? It's bogging on me." And I can't. And sure enough, I'm launching the car, and I'm pulling the shift cut knob at the same time. And oh yeah, so
that's awesome.
So I took and I have my line lock on my steering wheel now. So the only thing I do with the shifter. So even when I launch the car, I launch with both hands on the wheel now to keep my hand off the shifter, and then I
that's
just
smart.
reach down and grab it. But I'm like you, like I could probably use a big shift light.
Did you say street light?
Yeah, like a big street light inside the car. That was a hilarious video, by the way. It's like you could see it going down in the dark, and it's like you better shift or you're not gonna be able to see anymore.
It was so funny. We got home and I went to the local track, and man, I have to turn it down like to a quarter of the power that I normally have it on. So when I get there, I didn't turn it down. The thing goes down the racetrack and it hits limiter every single gear like instantly. So the shift lights just just flashing in my face. I'm like, oh my gosh, can't hit a gear to save my life today. It was funny.
That's so reassuring to hear. Like I'm not the only one that has these problems.
And some days you get in the car and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then other days you get in the car and it's like, I am on point today.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing when, like, how much do you remember from the past? You actually got pretty good recall, because sometimes, like when I ran 877 there, I was like, it would seem smooth and calm, and then you run like a 920, and it's like I can't remember anything from that past.
It was so violent, like just too much happened. Yeah, there's definitely been some passes where it's like, dude, I just ran a 630. Get the slip. Oh man, that was like a 12.5. I was all over the racetrack. What am I doing? Yeah, I don't know. It was smooth. I remember it coming up in a wheelie, and I pulled it at like 7,000 RPM to second gear, and it dropped the nose pretty hard. And just all of that right there, dude, there's so much time left in that. It's unbelievable. That 1-2 shift was definitely slowed me down by a lot, because the nose touched the ground. Like you watch the video and the thing basically face plants into the ground and then comes right back up and goes. And then after that, it was just super smooth, dude. It was like click, click.
Jonathan Atkins, here you come, hey?
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Nice.
It's damn near my inspiration, man. Like the guy just keeps on pulling it out of his hat.
Yeah,
It's awesome. I love
it's super
watching it.
impressive. It's super impressive.
And he does it with a small block Chevy too. Like I used to be so diehard small block Chevy, and my friends would pick on me all the time, like, "Oh, you should do this LS stuff," and I'd be like, "F that LS junk," blah blah blah. And then I got hooked into doing the LS stuff, and man, it just makes good power for super cheap. Well, at that time, it was super cheap. So like I loved playing with the LS stuff because it was blow it up, have another one the next day.
Yeah.
Whatever, no big deal.
Yeah.
But the small block stuff is if you heard it, man, we got to go to the machine shop, things got to get worked over, fixed. And you're never pulling a small block Chevy out of the junkyard and being like, oh, yep, bearings look good, cam bearings look good. Let's send it on 40 pounds and see what it does. It just never
not anymore. Yeah.
That's
crazy.
It's just insane. And I think it's so cool because it allows kids to get back into it too, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's we can get a bunch more hot rodders because it's affordable when you can go buy an $800 LS from the junkyard
and learn how to tune on it and learn how to set stuff up with like your valve train. They make that so easy to set valve train up in those things. Like, oh, you have a 75,000 bore lifter, right? You need 35,000 of preload. Like, man, you can't miss that.
Yeah,
you can't miss that. So it makes it. The LS definitely makes it a whole lot easier to get into.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But as for performance, when you dive into that aftermarket world, the small block Chevy, dude, having the 5 bolt holes around the cylinder just makes it hold the head down that much better. Like I got 6 bolt block and it still don't hold the head down. That's the other thing with crankcase pressure. If it picks the head up, oh, coolant pressure too. I check my coolant pressure. Even though I don't run coolant, I still have jackets in the block. So there's a coolant pressure sensor that goes into the coolant jackets of the block. And if I see pressure, that's picking the head up.
Yeah, I think I know I run one. I think you do too, Rich, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I always look at for sure.
Yeah, I like in it all.
So tell us about your business a bit. You've got Nick Cole-Mann's Customs. Do you just build race cars for people, chassis?
Yeah, build hot rods, everything from full tube chassis cars to everyday daily drivers. We got this Cadillac that's full interior, headlights, taillights, turn signals. We're gonna be doing an AC, like a vintage air system in it, and he's got it's a big one of the big sheer fab intakes hanging out the hood, and it's a sequential car. Put one of the S1 shifter, dude. This car is so crazy to drive, and it's so streetable. It's so much fun to drive. But now we got a 9-inch that's going to be going into it. And we're changing the trans back to an H pattern because he kind of wants to come and race in our class, H pattern class, because he can't really fit anywhere with his sequential. So that's a cool car. I got this 3rd gen Camaro we've been doing the last couple months. That's one of the lightest cars I think I've ever built. Motor, trans, rear end, everything other than flooring and Lexan. It weighs like 1680.
What?
It's just crazy, dude.
That's a go-kart.
It's a go-kart. There's nothing to it. Like it made me want to change from the S10 to one of these cars. It's 3rd gen Camaro. So that was my first car, actually, a 3rd gen Camaro. And it would just kind of bring it back to my old school, put a small block Chevy in it. I would almost do a Pro Charger on it and a 3rd gen Camaro, keep it light. That'd be cool.
Come kick our butts in the drag and drive stuff.
Oh man, I think that one would be like the unlimited car, and I'd have to make the S10 the drag and drive.
Yeah.
Well, is there rules on bed space?
No, just for race week, 3,000 pound minimum for a V8.
Okay.
If you want to go less than that, you could build a 4-cylinder, but I'm a little worried now because those guys are making as much power as we are.
Dude, I was having a conversation with my buddies about that, like the Speed Factory car. man, they're
Yeah.
doing it with half the cylinders, and it's that car just blows me out of the water. Blows my mind, man. Those guys are killing it.
And they're all-wheel
And they don't
drive.
have
Some of
slipper
them.
clutches either.
Yeah,
Like
they
that's what
don't. They use something like the Bankship Billy. Just the hydraulics slow it down.
Yep.
So that's impressive too that they get that to work and just keep the clutch alive that way. Because I don't know if they use a sintered iron or if they're still using like organic.
Yeah, they have
What
their
what?
centered iron. They're crazy aggressive because they're really
Yeah,
small
I
and
could
they're
never
like
see
triple
that working.
disc because they make so much power. They don't have like nothing else will hold it, but they're super aggressive. And we've got Jamie Langford and those guys. They're building a car right now, an all-wheel drive car. They're going to use the Bankship Billy on. So they haven't used
Cool.
one yet, but I'm
Yeah,
really
that's
anxious
cool.
to work with them on that because I think it's going to work really well. So
Awesome.
and Florida, like Sick Week is going to be crazy. Like I think there's 6 cars that are like have a 750 cert cage or faster. So yeah, I'm just gonna sit back with my old orange helmet and enjoy it because
Are you hating it that it's kind of running away now on time? No.
I mean, I think once we get enough people in the class, it'll be time to kind of do the same as a bunch of the other classes where you have enough people that you just need to make
Split it up.
and maybe that maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's an 850 cage and up and the other guys are in a faster class. But I actually just think it's so cool. Like if they can survive the week and run those times, like I'm gonna be impressed. I'm not doubting them at all though. Like I think there's much like you, Nick, there's a bunch of smart guys with stick cars and they understand what
Is
it
it
takes.
smart or are we just really, really stubborn? Because man,
Okay, maybe smart. None of us are that smart because we are taking the hard
it's so
road.
confusing because stubborn, smart, and stupid all start with S and stick.
and they all take about the same energy, you know?
Oh,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Oh,
But it's like you were talking. I mean, who could get in that truck and run a 695 tomorrow? Not very freaking many people. Probably only Nick. Like
probably.
they're all just
How
unique,
it's set
right?
up.
Yeah, like Jonathan Atkins to hop in your car. I mean, yeah, if you sat down with him for quite a while and told him what
I
you're
think
doing
he could
and stuff.
hop in it. I think
Yeah.
him, I think Joel Steele, I think a couple of these guys, Sean Madden, I think they could hop in my truck and run a good pass. I think I would have to acclimate them to the getting a rev limiter set up for them so they could drive it into it. Because I think my truck could do it. And I think if they're used to driving it that way, they could do it, But man, I just feel like if you're good at driving stick, you're good at driving stick,
Yeah, totally.
But they're all a little unique, right? Like
that's for sure.
That's
for sure.
You want to hit the TKO around there, Rich?
Yeah, we might as well. Just trying to think if we're missing anything. You got anything for us before we ask you the 6 questions?
Yeah. Do you have any questions for us, Nick Cole-Mann?
It's okay if you don't, though. We hardly ever ask that, and we think after. Yeah, we should
what
ask
makes
it.
You guys do the drag and drive stuff versus, like the higher prep and the come like join us stuff, What gets you into the drag and drive versus the just like the 1 or 2 day local event or Texas 2K, or what got you guys into that? That's
Go
my
ahead, Bill.
Well, first of all, I don't own a truck and trailer, so trailering a car there is not an option for me. And as much as I like the drag and drives, I might get scolded for this. I don't like sitting at the track all day and making like 3 passes. I just
totally
don't.
Understandable.
And if you don't have like the great big setup with the trailer and the RV and the barbecue and all that, it kind of sucks.
And I agree with that.
Yeah. So
as time has gone on, we've collected that stuff. Like we got a camper now. We carry everything we need to like live at the racetrack, because going to and from the hotel definitely sucks.
Yeah, and like my kids are older now, so it's not a big deal. But like I have a senior in high school and a sophomore in college. But even just a few years ago, like my weekend with them, that was the most important thing. Um, and they're just I have two girls and they're great, but they're just it's cool. Dad's got a cool car, but they don't want to go to the racetrack all day.
Yeah.
And I have a fiance and she tolerates it, but there's no way in hell she's going to spend a half a day. Well, she'll spend a half a day when race week rolls through, but she's not going to spend a weekend there. There's no way. So it's just like I enjoy the drag and drive. I get to hang out with guys like Rich, and we get to drive and we get to pass everybody on the road, which is pretty cool. I guess that's it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and for me it was summers are short in Canada. And if you're only a drag racer and you drive to the track and you have a bad day and you put it back in, I mean, sometimes it might be a couple of weeks before you get to go. And so there's some good tracks around here and stuff. I don't own a truck and trailer either. So, but for me, it's always been a personal goal to see how fast of a car I can have and still be completely streetable. That's why it's 4,000 pounds. Like,
it's full interior.
Like I'm gonna tow it. It's got a full interior. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I gotta copy that one too. Same. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and so and I've always kind of been a time slip hunter, more than a bracket racer. I definitely haven't done much heads up racing. I totally enjoy it, but haven't done much of that. And really, there was more bracket racing around, and it was like, I am not hitting the brakes. Like I'm here to see how fast this thing will go. You want me to hit the brakes? Like what the hell? That's not racing. For me, it was always, it's got to be streetable. I got to be able to drive it all summer long. Which I don't know how many miles I put on. I probably put on 15 to 18,000 miles last year on the car. And
I wish I could drive mine that much. That's so cool. That's what's got me intrigued, is you guys out there killing it almost every event you guys go to and put in that hard work. Like I enjoy that. That's cool.
Yeah. And much like you just described, I enjoy the thrash at the track. I enjoy the challenge of breaking a control arm in a gas station in the middle of freaking nowhere, Montana, and going, how the hell are we going to fix this? Like,
and then somehow you get it fixed, and it's like, it's just another story. It's an adventure. Like,
totally.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. 100%.
So I think that's,
it's we always have adventures on these to the racetrack, but it's always something stupid. Like that sounds like that would be way more fun.
Yeah, I would love to come to World Cup, or what's the one before World Cup?
FL2K.
Yeah, one of those, drive down with just my car and trailer. And
dude,
I know they've got them segregated. I think at both of those events, don't they have them segregated between, they call them the street class and I can't remember what they're called, but I don't know that. And maybe the cage would kick me out of it though too, but I don't care. If I could drive all the way down there and race with all you fast guys and hang out and drive all the way home,
that would be awesome. Epic. Dude, that'd be epic if you came to a World Cup or even TX2K in March.
Yeah.
That's March? Yeah, that's March.
I'll just be getting home from February. My bank account will be recovering from
sick week. I know how that one is, dude. It always sucks when you get back from a trip and it's like, all right, time to go back to work.
Yeah, totally. Oh, man.
So, all right, great question.
You want to kick it off, Rich?
I can, yep. Okay, what's the first car you owned or modified? This is the.
I had a 1987 Berlinetta Camaro, and I dropped a 355 in that thing, and it had a 5-speed in it. And it was so funny. It had V6 springs in it in the front, and I'm not sure if they were V6 in the back, but the nose would come up like way further than any car I ever seen before. It had probably 12 inches, 10 inches of front travel. And it was a 355 that made like 400 horse. And on a street tire, it would hook everywhere it went. And that car was just so much fun to beat the crap out of.
Yeah. There's something about those second gen Camaros and Firebirds that when you get in them, feel like Burt Reynolds and Sally Field sitting right next to you. Like it's just like the whole seating position and everything is like there's something. Like I got a 77 Trans Am 4-speed T-top car that I'm doing, and it'll have a 6-speed with a turbo on it and stuff. But
oh, nice.
yeah, my son drove that when we went and got a new windshield, and he came back and he's like, "Dad, this is so cool! Like, all these old ladies are looking at me in this car," and it's like, yeah, it is awesome.
That's funny.
Nice.
That's
All right,
cool.
let's slide it into second gear. What, in your opinion, Nick, has been the biggest technology change to move our sport forward?
Like our stick shift class, or just automotive drag racing in general?
I guess you could answer it both ways.
In the stick world, I think it's just, I don't think it's necessarily technology. I think it's people pushing what's available to like their transmissions. You know, I guess whatever everything that Tick has done for the T56 platform, that's really what's pushed our sport, I think. As for the rest of the automotive, I think that engine management has come so far in the last 5 years. It's insane.
Yep, I would agree.
Okay, this is the question I gave you the heads up on. If you could spend one day with somebody, we didn't put this living or dead, but that's up to you. And who would it be, and what would you do? Yeah, one day.
I would spend the day with my dad, and I would just show him everything that I've basically accomplished, and take him to the racetrack and show him that I took what he used to do and kind of ran with it a lot further. And I just want him to be proud of me. That's who I would choose to be
Is
with.
your dad's passed on then, is he, Nick?
Yeah, he passed away when I was 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, but it's genetics, man. Like, he was into cars. He built a sprint car that he ripped around the yard. He built a drag bike that they used to take up north and just rip it down the back roads, do like 200 miles an hour.
Nice.
Yeah, he was a wild man. So
that's awesome.
The fruit definitely doesn't fall far from the tree there, I'm thinking. But,
yes, that's great.
Genetics, man. It's crazy.
All right,
awesome.
So 1-to-1, fourth gear. What influenced you to build your cars?
Man, I've had lots of influences along the way. The first one to kind of chase what I'm doing now, just like with stick shift in general, was my mom's. They're my mom's best friends, and his name's Woody, and he had a 55 Chevy that had an automatic in it, and he told me that a stick would never go that fast. So I kind of set out to just prove him wrong on that. And I definitely did that for sure.
Yes, you did. Yes.
He went like an 890 with his car, which this was, I want to say 15 years ago. That was impressive back then. So that was the first one. And then to get where I'm at right now, the two big pushes that really for me was Granis and Grubworm. You know, Granis just because he always had the top dog car, and like that's all I really want to be is top dog. And dude, Atkins just took it and he threw it way out there.
Watch this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was so cool.
Those were some big influences in my life.
That's awesome.
This.
Awesome. We kind of talked about this one in the question above, but we'll ask it. So this is the last gear in a TKO. What, in your opinion, is the secret to stick shift racing?
Never give up. Never give up. No matter how hard it is, no matter what obstacles you have to overcome, no matter who tells you can't do it, no matter what, just never give up. And you can't stop enjoying it. You got to just love it. You love it for the bad, and you got to love it for the good, because it all comes no matter what. It'll all be there.
Nice.
So
awesome.
All right, we're gonna swap this TKO out now for a T56, and that gives us an extra gear. So we got number 6. What advice would you give to someone getting into this sport?
Whew. Come at it head on. Don't cheap out on shit, because like you'll spend more money cheaping out than you will just buying the good parts you need right away. And
we've heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah, just man, just give it your all, because like it's gonna take it all.
Yep, that's it. Well, Nick, really, number one, congratulations once again. You're killing it, man. And I'm just so glad we got to meet you like this. I can't wait to meet you in person.
Yeah, I've
so
been trying to figure out how to get to you guys, because like,
where do
I
you
follow
live?
you guys too. I'm in Wisconsin, so I'm close to you, but not that close. You know.
Yeah,
I've been through Wisconsin in my car a few times, actually.
Dude, if you drive through, hit me up. I'm probably like 30-40 minutes out of Milwaukee, so if you're ever cruising through, stop on by.
Nice.
I just might do that. You never know. I might even do it on the way home from Florida.
Cool.
Depending on where the weather, which storm I'm trying to dodge in my winter tires and mud flaps. But
yes. So let's
a
huge thanks to Stick Shift Nation for hosting the podcast. You can find the Clutch Burners podcast on 10 different platforms. And if you'd like to see this podcast continue and grow, head over to sticknation.com, grab a Stick Shift Nation shirt, hat, or sticker. And of course, you can get Clutch Burners shirts there. And yeah, that's it. We're going to wrap this thing up. So stick around because we might have other stuff to talk about. But other than that, this has been awesome, Nick. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Really
welcome. So don't hang up, though.
Yeah. All right. Over and out.